Madam President and Senators, good afternoon. Ephesians chapter 1 and a part of verse 18 states, having the eyes of your hearts enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you. Senators and leaders, have you ever paused in this juncture of your life to determine the following? What does God require from you in this season of your life? Are you living a purpose-led life? As you conduct your responsibilities and tasks as senators, what grade would God assign to you? Do you live in a manner that would please God, or are you self-focused and popularity-driven? As you continue in your senatorial duties, remember God knows you and has allowed your appointment for this season. He knows the gifts, talents, strengths, opportunities, and your purpose, and what has been placed within you to give service to our nation. And so I say to you, stay the course and strive for excellence. The first thing I want to share with you is this: stay focused to your purpose. Proverbs 19 and 21 states, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Examine closely the people who have been assigned to you. Make sure that you are serving them well and that you continue to uplift and empower them. There will always be some who will be critical, but when you've done your best and served with integrity, then it is commendable. Each day as you serve, as you conduct your duties, remember you are developing a legacy that will outlive your senatorial appointment. Don't get distracted. Keep the main thing, the main thing. Sam Levinson said, don't watch the clock. Do what the clock does. Keep going. Secondly, take time to develop yourself. Be a person who is always growing and learning. Never stop being curious and always seek to grow in a holistic manner. This will enhance your leadership thrust and your ability to serve others. Proverbs 15 and 14 states, the heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feed on folly. Karl Barth said, no one can go back and make a brand new start. Anyone can start from now and make a brand new end. Thirdly, remember we are all God's children. As a nation and a people, we state that we are a Christian nation and a people. But do we seek his guidance in leading in national and national responsibilities? It is easy to display our faith when we're all in agreement and on the same page. But as you move forward in your debates today and beyond this place, note, when you encounter your naysayers and critics, remember, we are all created in God's image, and God desires the best from everyone. Be gracious in your speech. Be gracious in your speech, wise in your counsel, and kind in your manner, because there is a time and a season for everything. I conclude with Titus 2 and a part of verse 7. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. John Wesley's rules for life was this: do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the places you can, in all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Let's pray. Dear God, we give you thanks for today and for all your blessings that come to us in our beautiful Bahama land. We are grateful that that you have called each one of these senators to lead in this season. Grant them discernment, wisdom, vision, and fortitude. May they serve with a servant's heart and an excellent spirit. May they never grow weary in well-doing. Cover them in your precious blood and protect and perfect everything concerning them and watch over their families. Bless them this day and all the days of their lives. In Jesus' name. Please join in the prayer of our Lord. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good afternoon, Senators, and to also persons in the gallery. Today is the 5th day of February, 2026, the afternoon session of the Senate. I shall proceed with the agenda items. Adoption of minutes.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of the session of the Senate held on Monday, the 2nd of February 2026 be adopted.
It has been moved and seconded that the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, the 2nd of 2026 be adopted. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those in favor say nay. The ayes have it. The minutes of the meeting of the Senate held on Monday, the 2nd of February 2026, hereby adopted. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour. Senator Seymour, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise today with gratitude, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility to formally tender my resignation from the Senate of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas after more than 4 years of service. This is not a farewell born of fatigue, nor a retreat. It is a transition guided by principle. Public service is never meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be consequential. It asks of us not only conviction, but courage, not only ambition, but restraint. It demands that we know when to stand firm and when to step forward in a different way. From the very beginning, I entered public life with a simple belief that leadership is not about occupying a seat, but about holding space for others, holding space for the people whose voices are too often drowned out by urgency or overlooked by convenience, holding space for those who live at the margins of policy, yet remain at the very center of our moral responsibility. Let me say this without hesitation. I never needed the title to serve, and I do not require a title to continue serving. Service is not bestowed by the office. It is rooted in values, and throughout my time in this honorable chamber, my values have been clear and consistent. The Bahamian people first, always. I have sought in every contribution to help build a Bahamas for all, beginning with our elderly, our children, persons with disabilities, survivors of gender-based violence, single mothers, single fathers, and those who are too often left unseen or unheard. The disenfranchised have never been an abstract concept to me. They are our neighbors, our families, our future, our friends. And to be entrusted with the responsibility of speaking on their behalf has been one of the greatest privileges of my entire life. To be a voice for the voiceless is not simply a slogan I adopted immediately following my appointment in 2021. It is a solemn duty, and I have carried it with reverence. Madam President, this Senate matters. It matters because democracy depends not only on power, but on accountability, not only on numbers, but on conscience. In this place, we scrutinize legislation, we challenge untruths, we test intentions, we hold the government to account, not out of hostility, Madam President, but out of duty to the Bahamian people. I am grateful for the opportunity to have participated in that work. Thank you to the former Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, who appointed me to the Senate. I am especially thankful to our current leader, the Honorable Michael C. Pintard, who allowed me to retain my appointment and continue this service over these years. That confidence mattered, and I do not take it lightly. I also wish to acknowledge the officers and members of the Free National Movement.
Come on, Max. Come on. Come on, Max.
I also wish to acknowledge the officers and members of the Free National Movement, those whose labor often go without spotlight, who organize, advocate, listen, and stand firm in communities across this country. Your work strengthens our democracy, and your commitment to the Bahamas does not go unnoticed. It is also important to say this plainly. The Bahamas is not short on qualified, capable, principled people who can serve in this chamber. We are blessed with men and women of substance, many of whom proudly stand within the ranks of the Free National Movement. Nation building is not a single act, it is a relay. And there are moments when service requires us not to cling to position, but to honor the larger purpose it exists to serve. To put people first, to stand on principle, to be brave enough to know that leadership does not end when a chapter closes, it evolves. As I pass the baton, I do so with confidence and with expectation that the next voice to occupy this seat will be a woman, because women in this country have too often borne the weight of policy without the benefit of power, carried communities without adequate representation, and done the quiet, consequential work that keeps families and nations standing. A woman brings not only competence, but a deep understanding of how decisions made in this chamber shape real lives, real households, and real futures. That knowledge is not incidental, it is essential. My hope is that whoever comes next will continue to advance critical issues, elevate those long ignored, and will continue to hold the Davis administration to account where it has failed the people. Madam President, and Mr. Vice President too, I thank you for your stewardship of this honorable chamber. I extend my best wishes to all Senate colleagues and their loved ones. I particularly acknowledge the opposition caucus and those with whom I have shared this journey. Former Senator Vianna Gardner, who was appointed alongside me and has since moved on, and my current colleagues, Senator Darren Hanfield, leader of opposition business, Senator Reuben Ramming, and Senator Michaela Barnett Ellis. It has been an honor to serve with you. Madam President, before I close, I must acknowledge those whose names do not appear in the Hansard, but without whom this service would not have been possible. To my husband, Rico, to my children, Lyndon Joshua in the gallery, Rika, Renee, and Rachel, to my mother, Nathalie, to my aunts, Yvette, Paulette, Advara, and Annie Mae, and every other relative and friend who has supported me and prayed for me, thank you. Public service is never an individual act. It is made possible by families and communities who absorb absence, shoulder sacrifice, and silently fill the gaps so that one may serve the nation with a clear mind and a steady heart. Your love, patience, and consistency have been my unseen strength, and I carry that gratitude with me always. As I leave this place, I do so with a clear conscience and a full heart. I believe, truly believe, that the Bahamas is better for my time here, not because I was flawless, but because I was faithful, faithful to the people, faithful to the principle, faithful to the belief that politics at its best is an act of service. Let me be clear as I conclude. I am stepping away from a title, not from the work. I will continue to serve without office, without privilege, without pause, because service is who I am. As the old hymn reminds us, I vow to thee, my country, the service of my love, the love that asks no questions, the love that stands the test. That is the measure of commitment I carry forward. To those on the front lines of public life and to those contemplating a future in frontline politics, I offer this counsel. Be principled. Put people first. Never forget the weight of the responsibility you carry. Let our flag always mean more than any party symbol. Let the color aquamarine always rise above every other color. For in the end, the measure of our service is not how long we hold office, but how faithfully we hold fast to what is right. Thank you for the trust you have placed in me. Thank you for allowing me to serve. And thank you for continuing the work of building a nation worthy of all its people. May God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, every island, rock, and key. May He guide us, protect us, and allow our nation to prosper. Thank you, Madam President.
Swearing in of new senators. Communications by the President. It is with a heavy heart that the President accepts the resignation of Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour, which reads, stated February 5th, 2026, and reads, Dear Madam President, resignation. I, Senator Maxine Seymour, hereby submit my formal resignation as a member of the Senate of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity to serve in this honorable chamber. Respectfully submitted, Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour. In moments like this, it's difficult to say farewell. During the last 4 years, Senator Seymour, you've made significant contributions to the Senate body. Your contributions were not just limited to the Senate body, but community service, where it mattered most, to advocacy, to the rule of law, and to democratic principles. You did a yeoman's job with your contributions. It gripped the entire Senate body, and we will never forget them. I know a few that I will personally never forget, but I don't want to say it in a public manner. You are a fierce advocate, courageous. You are the voice for the voiceless, the elderly, women, children, and the disabled, the people in God's sight that matters the most. You've demonstrated honor, principle, commitment, and integrity where it mattered the most. And I would for always admire those qualities in you. Although the service to the upper chamber is ended, I'm absolutely certain that your service to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and more importantly, the service to the Almighty God, will be forever and forever and forever. So I say to you, farewell, just for now, but I know that you'll continue to stay the course. And in the famous words of that poet, I want you to continue to strive for perfection, because when you do, you'll always catch excellence, as you always do. May God bless you, Senator Maxine, and may he keep you in the very palm of his hands. God bless and keep you. And I look forward to hearing even better things about you, because I believe that the best is yet to come. At this time, I would now invite members of the chamber to bestow farewell remarks upon our good colleague, Senator Maxine Seymour. I'll first start with the Leader of Opposition Business, Senator Darren Henfield. You have the floor, Senator Henfield.
Thank you, Madam President. It is with heavy heart that I rise to do this. I call her affectionately at times Max. And it was tough to watch. Sometimes people think as politicians we don't have feelings, you know. We seek simply only the limelight, the power, the excitement that comes along with office. But Senator Seymour and I started on this journey 4 years ago on that fateful day in 2021 down at Bahama, and I recall some things about that day, but I didn't really know her as well as I have come to know her over the past 4+ years. I know that she's an extraordinary social advocate for women, girls, a shadow for the Ministry of Social Services. She raised her voice loudly, not only in this place, but also in the public, by writing, by speaking, and by keeping those issues that concern women and children and girls in particular always before us. She never allowed the abuse of a child or the death, untimely demise of a child to go unnoticed by Bahamians, and I believe even others followed. She's a nationalist at heart who came to work every day to do her best in the interest of the Bahamian people, in the interest of her party, in the interest of her family and the country that she served. Max is a fighter, and soldiers identify fighters. I always knew that when we were coming for a fight, Max would be in the foxhole beside me, throwing her best blows, sometimes, most times, to the agitation of those who sat opposite. And they too, Madam President, I believe my colleagues opposite too will miss Max for the fights that he brought to this place. Finally, I want to say that Maxine Seymour is a loyal supporter of the Free National Movement, who did her best in this place, to serve. And as I take my seat, there is a scripture that reminds us that when we have done our best as man, in this context I say so generically, as people, when we have done our best, chaplain, even the angels in heaven can do no better. And so on behalf of my colleagues here, on behalf of my colleagues on the outside, it was a pleasure to work with you, even though we didn't always have the best of days. Right? It was a pleasure to work with you, and it was more of a pleasure to fight beside you. And I thank you. God bless you.
The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Alcides.
Thank you, Madam President.
Before you proceed, I just want to thank Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield for those wonderful words. Thank you, Senator Henfield.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, you know, we came in with the expectation that we would do two minor amendments to some climate change, carbon credit legislation. I'm tongue-tied. And we get this bombshell. But I want to say, Madam President, that I never knew Senator Maxine Seymour before she came into this place. But I immediately found out that she was more than a worthy adversary. She was passionate about the disabled, about women's and children's issues, domestic violence in particular, autism, the whole gamut of issues that impact the most vulnerable amongst us. And she spoke inside this place and outside this place, Madam President, with such passion and conviction that we know that it went beyond her duty as Shadow Minister for Public Service, Social Services, went beyond her duties as Shadow Minister for Social Services. But it came from a true belief and a true passion and a true conviction that more needed to be done to protect the most vulnerable amongst us. She's a true believer, Madam President, as the leader of opposition business said, loyal and vocal supporter of the Free National Movement. And I don't think I'll utter these words any other time, Madam President, but she did keep our feet to the fire. And she did so, Madam President, without acrimony and without malice. But I believe that we can be on opposite sides of this table, advocate for what we believe, what we think is in the best interest of the country from our different perspectives. We can disagree without being disagreeable. And so I want to say all the best in your future endeavors. Your talent, your passion, and your belief tells me that this is not the last that we have seen of Maxine Seymour in Bahamian politics. So we wish you all the best. Respect.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Michael Alkitis. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. It has been an absolute pleasure to serve in this honorable place with Senator Seymour. You know, as the only two women in the caucus, our caucus, in our caucus, we developed a special relationship. We became sisters in arms, developed relationships with each other's children, each other's daughters. To be a woman and parent in this place requires strength. And to have somebody who goes through it with you, offering advice and guidance and support every step of the way, is priceless, and I will be forever grateful. Maxine has taught me a lot. She has taught me how to be deliberate. I better put on waterproof mascara. Taught me how to be deliberate and ensure that I make sure that I am seen. And not just, in photographs, but in social media and being deliberate. And I find myself very often asking, what would Maxine do? On Monday, being the first hearing that we had in February, before I left the house, I said, no, I need to put on my Bahamas Heart Association pin because that's the kind of thing that Maxine would do. And even, Madam President, right before I came here, I got distracted. My daughter got her school photos for the year. And I was gonna send it to Maxine. And then I said, no, Michael, focus on getting to the Senate. You can show her in the chamber. Because that is the presence that she has in my life. I agree with you, Madam President. The best is yet to come for Maxine. And Maxine, I promise you that we will always take it to the max.
Thank you for those kind remarks, Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable J.Ann Major.
Thank you, Madam President. I feel a little bit blindsided because I thought me and Max was cool, but I mean, she walking here today, oh, Senator Major, I ain't see you in a minute, and she ain't even give me a wink or nothing. But I mean, give me something next time, Max. Come on now, Max. This is what I'm saying. I thought birthday or something, but anyway. So I obviously don't have a speech prepared. I used to be the newest one in the Senate until Senator Small arrived here. So I haven't known Maxine for that long, little over a year. But I must say that if it's one thing that stands out about Senator Seymour is her dedication to her family, her dedication to the rights of women, children, and the elderly. It is certainly admirable, and when you say that you do this beyond the title, I wholeheartedly believe that. Last year, we spent some time together in New York at CSW, where we got to be outside of these walls and have a lot of frank, casual conversations, and I feel like I got to know you a little bit better. So when I say that I know your dedication to your family and your mother, your children, I know how important that is to you, and I don't think this is a decision that you took lightly. So I certainly want to wish you the best in the next chapter, and I certainly want to thank you for your service in this honorable place. You leave behind this elite group of women who made sure we're not here just to be another woman at the table, but to make sure our voices are heard, and you certainly have left your mark in this place. I certainly wish you all the best.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Jan Major, for those kind words. You go ahead. Yeah. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Dr. Eresia Hepburn.
I'll only be brief, Madam President. Unlike from what I'm hearing those around the table, I actually had the opportunity to meet Maxine before we both were senators because, like she said, she does a lot of civic work. And she happens to work to one of those places where I used to I still do, hold out my hand a lot for some of our civic organizations. So I've known her for quite a few years because of her advocacy, she always ensured that when I come out with my hands, and I have big hands, that they always are filled to the brim for all of the organizations that I represent. Unfortunately, on Monday, she left before she got a compliment. One of my colleagues from the Red Cross made sure that we all knew how much she enjoyed her contribution. I had to tell her, well, what about me? She was like, well, we always hearing you talk, But she was really impacted by your passion, your dedication, and your drive. See, they don't know. I also taught her daughter. See, I hope if, Major thought she gets swing, imagine me. Let her message me about something else. Anyway, I think because I have to come with those hands again. But I want you to know whatever is the next in your chapter, I know you will excel and do well. And on behalf of all of us, I can assure you we will miss you. I don't understand the rationale leaving when the bell's soon ring, but you know it is best. So may God continue to bless you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Dr. Eresia Hepburn Forbes, for your kind words. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Deante Benaby Small. Yes, Sante, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I just wanted to join in the choir of women lending our support to Senator Seymour. We would have met almost 5 years ago, always on the other side. But she has always been a woman that I believe represents the best of us. And it's really in the fact that a woman that's willing to speak up, show up, and step out. As the newest senator, I know it's not easy when you make the decision to become even more public. So I want to thank you for being another example to young Bahamian women and girls everywhere, that it's okay to step up, to speak out. No matter how much times you have to keep banging at the door, you have to do it because those who are voiceless need a voice. Those who feel unseen need to be seen. And you've seen them, and you've spoken up for them. I think we started off this afternoon very well in a reminder of our legacy. And I believe that your legacy thus far is all about service. As I know you in the professional space as well, you are truly a woman that leads by example. And all of the things that you've spoken up about, you are truly doing the walk in every aspect of your life. So I wish you all the best. And I'm certain that this is only the beginning for you. I, like Senator Hepburn, do not understand the rationale, but I do believe that you are led by God, His purpose for your life, and He will ensure that you are elevated and advance His kingdom in all that you do. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Deasante Benaby Small, for your words of encouragement. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Tyrell Young.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Madam President. And Maxine, I join in by saying the same thing that Mike said earlier. You drop a bombshell on us today. Sorry, Senator Alcides you dropped a bombshell on us today. Fortunately, we were able to serve together, and I agree with everyone that you're a woman of honor and integrity. You stand by what you believe in, and you fight for those who are less, who are the vulnerable among us. And I say farewell. Farewell is never easy, whether it's good or bad. Fortunately, this is a good one. But we say farewell to you, and thank you for your contributions. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. And now I understand why you accosted me in the galley and said, Senator Young, we don't have a picture together. We need to get a picture together. Now it all makes sense. The piece of the puzzle, this was the missing piece of that puzzle. But I say farewell, and I say thank you again for your contributions. And I know, being the person that I see you are a fighter and a soldier, and you will continue on in this army fighting for your country and your people. I say farewell and enjoy your next step, and be great as you were great in this chamber.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Tyrell Young, for your encouraging words. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ronald Duncombe. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I'm lost for words. But you know what, Madam President? I knew something was up when I saw her came here in a binder. I see a senator plate in a binder. And I go, why her plates, in a binder? So I said backstage, and yeah, I'm like, why is her plate in a binder? She must have a new Maserati parked outside, eh? You know, but, yeah, but on a serious note, I'm very surprised and shocked. I was like, what? Okay. But I just want to say, for the record, it was indeed a pleasure serving with you. I always viewed you as a woman of integrity. You serve with great distinction. One thing I wanted to say for everybody to know that Maxine is a woman who, while in this place, regardless of her being on the wrong side of the fence, someone I give great respect to as a person and as a woman, and not even as a politician, as you wanted to aspire to become. But I wish you nothing but the best. Fond farewell. Looking forward to see what the next chapter in your life brings to you. And thank you so much for your service.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator the Honorable Ronald Duncombe, for your encouraging remarks towards Senator Maxine Seymour. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Kirkland Russell. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am not normally not lost for words, but I am this morning, this afternoon. I don't have much to say because so much have already been said. But what I want the Bahamas to know about Maxine Seymour in this Senate was that she brought a sense of civility to the Senate. And I'll tell you why I say that. What you see here on television is one part of what goes on in this building. When the televisions are off and we are in cafeteria breaking bread together, Maxine Seymour, true to form, brings a sense of civility. She is able to dialogue with colleagues from the opposite side, bring and stand firm to her positions, but at the same time, not crushing you, not spewing negativity. And she's just a humble soul. And so I don't know who I can joke with now and talk political talk, because Michael is a little bit more stringent. But I truly want to thank you, Max, for being open, for being open, to being receptive to conversations, and to never holding no kind of grudge, animosity, nothing. You truly bring civility, man, to the conversation of PLP and FNM. And that is the way this country ought to move. And if anything we learn from you is that you must always be civil in your discourse, and I appreciate you. May God continue to bless you in all of your efforts.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Kirkland Russell, for your kind words. The chair now recognizes Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin, the Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President. Much like Senator Major and Senator Young, I feel blindsided. Not even a wink, not even a pinch or a tug to give you a little bit of a heads up. And so I didn't have anything written, but I tried to pen something while everyone else was speaking because I do think her service deserves to be acknowledged and recognized, even if she didn't give us enough heads up to write something proper. But I just want to put on the record my sincere appreciation and respect for our colleague, Senator Maxine Seymour, on this occasion of her resignation from this honorable Senate. Although we sit on opposing sides of the political aisle, I believe it is important and I believe it is right that we acknowledge service when we see it. Senator Seymour has been, in every sense of the word, a service-oriented parliamentarian. She approached her work with sincerity, consistency, and a genuine concern for the people she represented and the causes she championed. She brought to this chamber a good heart, a steady voice, and a clear commitment to public duty. Throughout her time here, Madam President, she demonstrated what it means to be a diligent and thoughtful senator, prepared in her interventions, respectful in her engagement, and always conscious that our debates are not simply political exchanges, but decisions that affect the real lives of real people across the Bahamas. Now, we may not have always agreed on policy or the direction of the government, but I have always respected the integrity with which she carried out her role. She served this institution well, and she served the Bahamas with sincerity and purpose. Outside of the Senate, we often connected on being working professionals in our private lives and the sacrifices it takes to be a good and diligent senator. So I know directly from the horse's mouth the professional sacrifices she's made and the sacrifices within her family that she's made in order to be a senator. Now, I'm not sure if I told her this before, but before she became a senator, I was very excited to meet her. I followed all of the campaigns of the 2021 political season online, and although I didn't know her, her social media stuck out to me. And so she was always someone that I wanted to meet just because she had a great social media presence during the campaign. And so when she became a senator, I was excited to meet her for the first time in here. And I must say that her presence here in the Senate followed her social media presence. She certainly brought her communications expertise to the role here in Senate. Her riveting and entertaining contributions, the poster boards, the props, the mix-up like conch salad. My personal favorite is when, I don't even know if she had a ball, but she had the ball where she was saying, we would juggle it and you gotta watch them over here when they throw in the ball over here. So she certainly kept us on this side entertained, if not anything else. And so I don't know the rhyme or reason for the resignation, much like my colleagues here, who believe the bell is about to ring. I don't know the rhyme or the reason, but I'm sure that, as one of the senators said before, she's been guided by God and she's made her decision. But I just wanted to read a few lines from one of my favorite poems from high school that I thought might be fitting here as she goes on a new path. The path to a dream is paved with sacrifices and lined with determination. And though it has many stumbling blocks along the way and may go in more than one direction, it is marked with faith. It is traveled by belief and courage, persistence and hard work. It is conquered with willingness to face challenges and take chances, to fail and to try again. Madam President, I know that Senator Seymour's story is only beginning. I know that this isn't the last time we will see her or hear of her. We hope that she'll come over, but knowing Senator Seymour is knowing that her blood bleeds a deep red, so I won't hold my breath. But I wish Senator Seymour every success in the next chapter of her life and service. I trust that whatever path she chooses, our country will continue to benefit from her experience, her compassion, and her willingness to serve. So, Senator Seymour, thank you. Thank you for your contributions to this honorable Senate. It's been a pleasure working with you and being your colleague, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all senators for your kind remarks and your kind words towards Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour. And the leader of government business would normally give the wrap up, but I'll take the opportunity to give the wrap up here. And just a few short words. I would just once again want to say thank you for your stellar contributions. You've not sat idly by and warmed the seat, but you've been an excellent contributor and advocate. So continue to raise the floor and smash the glass ceiling. God bless you, Senator. Okay.
Madam President, I move that the business of the Senate do suspend for 10 minutes.
Madam President, I so second.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of the Senate hereby suspends for 10 minutes. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The business of the Senate stands suspended for 10 minutes. Thank you. Honorable Senators, prior to the suspension of the Senate, we were at agenda item messages from the Governor General. I presume that we are now ready to proceed. Continuing with the agenda, messages from the House of Assembly. Laying of documents by the ministers. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg leave to lay on the table of the Senate copies of the following: the Public Debt Management Bahamas Registered Stock 2029, 2031, 2032, 2036, 2048, and 2053 Directions 2026. The fiscal year 2026-2027 to fiscal year 2028-2029 medium-term debt management strategy, and the Bahamas National Energy Policy 2025 to 2030.
Order documents be brought up. Order documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents?
And none, Madam President.
Communications by ministers. Communications by senators. Questions. Answers to questions. Presentation of petitions. Appointment of select committees. Reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Further second reading.
Second reading and committee.
Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. I rise for second reading and committal of the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill 2025, and along with that, the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill 2025. And these two bills are taken together. Mr. Vice President, these two bills taken together govern the way that we manage our response to both climate change, the impact on our environment, and on carbon market, the development of the carbon market, the use of the carbon market for the trade of carbon credits. Mr. Vice President, as has been said many, many times, climate change is existential to the Bahamas. It affects our very existence. We know that we are a low-lying country. We know the stories of the reports of sea level rise. And we know that, small country though we are, we bear the brunt of the impacts of climate change, though we are very, very small contributors to the whole climate change phenomenon. And we passed two pieces of legislation back in 2022. The one was the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Bill, and one was we had another bill, I don't recall the exact name of it, but we're doing a new bill here to establish the carbon unit. And so we have the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill, and as well a new bill called the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill. I'll go through the changes of what the changes the amendment bill seeks to implement, and as well what we are seeking to do through the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill, which is a new piece of legislation. Mr. Vice President, the amendment bill, the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill 2025 reassigns high-level responsibilities. The Prime Minister gains overall oversight and reporting under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, called the UNFCCC. So the Prime Minister gains overall oversight and reporting on the United Nations Framework Convention, and the Minister of Finance is charged with financial administration and collection of levies. The Registrar now reports to the Prime Minister, and the bill also corrects some drafting issues and redirects. It corrects some drafting issues and redirects specific reporting obligations away from the portfolio of the Ministry of Environment to the United Nations Framework Convention reporting minister. The Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill, this is the new bill, creates a dedicated unit under the Prime Minister to regulate and oversee carbon markets, develop Article 6 rules, and that is Article 6 of the Paris Convention, which deals with climate change. This unit would also handle national climate reporting, coordinate climate finance, and operate a climate change and environment fund. So we're creating a central unit to deal, if you will, with all matters climate change, situated in the office of the Prime Minister, that coordinates our response on all levels. If we were to compare the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill to the principal bill, the Carbon Change and Carbon Market Bill of 2022, we'll see that in Section 5, ministerial oversight is split, whereas the Prime Minister will have overall oversight, and all United Nations Framework Convention, and I'll shorten that to say Framework Convention in the future, all Framework Convention reporting obligations. The Prime Minister will have overall oversight and reporting obligations under the Framework Convention, Mr. Vice President, and that is done to centralize it within the office of the Prime Minister and all of the powers and privileges that reside within the office of Prime Minister, inclusive of the fact that it being within the office of the Prime Minister sends a message as to the seriousness, in my opinion, with which this matter is being addressed. The Minister of Finance will have overall responsibility for financial administration and ensuring that any levies connected to carbon credit trade are paid. In Section 18 of the, well, in Section 3 of the amendment, which addresses Section 18 of the Principal Act, that simply fixes a drafting error, spelling error, where, you know, it said appropriate ministers, and now it says ministers is spelled correctly. Section 4 of the amendment addresses Section 26 of the Principal Act, where now previously the responsibility fell under the Minister of Environment, and that is now changed to Minister with responsibility for reporting obligations to the Framework Convention. And the final section, Section 5, addresses reporting reports being done periodically to the Prime Minister, where the Registrar is now required to submit periodic reports to the Prime Minister and not the Environment Minister. And so overall, it is what the amendment bill does is the reassignment of reporting under the Framework Convention from the Environment Minister to the Prime Minister. The Director of the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit, which is being created by the bill which I will now address, reports to the Prime Minister and assists the Prime Minister with mitigation, advises the Prime Minister on climate mitigation, adaptation, and any agreement under the Paris Agreement, which deals, particularly Article 6, which deals with climate change. And so the registrar of the unit reports directly to the Prime Minister. The Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill, Mr. Vice President, creates the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit under the Office of the Prime Minister. And that unit will have specific responsibilities. And these responsibilities include the development and implementation of national climate policies and plans, and the submission of national climate reports. They are to regulate and oversee carbon markets and Article 6 participation, so our participation and conformity with Article 6 of the Paris Convention. And they are also to assist in mobilizing climate finance, mitigate loss and damage, and to support the development of educational capacity, so education about the impacts of climate change. As we know, Mr. Vice President, or we may know, there's a lot of talk in the international community about the availability of climate finance, and in many cases, much more talk than finance. And so there is a need, or there might be finance, but it is so difficult and so cumbersome for nations to access that finance that we need a dedicated unit that can develop the expertise in accessing those instruments and those funds, and again, situated within the Office of the Prime Minister. The unit will also be responsible for developing rules and guidance and codes of practice under Article 6, and to monitor the implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Convention, Paris Accord. And also there is a national emissions registry that was established under the 2022 Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Bill. And this Climate Change Advisory Unit will be responsible for developing, working along with, developing rules and working along with the National Carbon Emissions Registry, developing the registry and keeping it current. The central unit, the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit, I call it a central unit under the Office of the Prime Minister, will also be responsible for disseminating information on climate change to all other government ministries, and as well where there is a requirement for interministerial cooperation, where ministries need to work together. This unit will be responsible for coordinating those activities. The unit will also be responsible for establishing a climate change and environmental fund. And the purpose of that is to receive international finance from places like the Global Climate Fund or the Global Environmental Fund or the Loss and Damage Fund, if it's ever established, the Adaptation Fund, debt swaps, etc. So responsible for receiving funds from those various international sources. The Act allows for the appointment of the director as the focal point to the convention, to climate funds under the United Nations Convention, and would be responsible for applications for grants and technical assistance, etc. So a central unit responsible for basically coordinating our climate response. We are also, there's a concept called budget tagging, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President. And so this unit will work closely with the Ministry of Finance as well as the Disaster Risk Management Authority. And budget tagging basically is being able to identify all of the different expenditures in your budget that is related to climate change, either it's recovery, it's adaptation, education, whatever. Whatever funds are spent that has to do with climate change. They call it budget tagging. There's a note made so that the country, in this case the Bahamas, can keep a record of the amount of money that is spent on climate change. So when down the road, if someone says, well, how much did you spend on climate change and adaptation in the 2024-2025 budget, you can say you've kept a track of it. And it is useful for when you're interacting with these international finance sources as well as other international organizations, so you can show the true impact of climate change on our budget and on our country. And the Prime Minister, under this act, the Prime Minister is designated as the minister responsible for supervision on climate matters. And so to summarize the changes, back in the 2022 Act, there was a heavier reliance on the Environment Minister for administration, reporting, and registry-related matters. The 2025 Act centralizes strategic oversight and reporting with the Prime Minister, financial administration with the Ministry of Finance, and establishes the specialized unit to oversee all of that within the office of the Prime Minister. And the objective of this exercise, Mr. Vice President, is for better management and oversight, simply put. We anticipate clearer accountability and decision speed of making decisions with one centralized unit. As I said, central oversight by the Office of the Prime Minister reduces fragmentation, and it allows us to report to any, send information to any foreign entity that we need to, as well as to receive information from outside and then disseminate amongst the ministries. It allows for assigning the enforcement of any levies directly to the Ministry of Finance, and also the budget tagging exercise improves our ability to measure the amount of money we spend as well as to collect the revenue. And the unit basically becomes the operational backbone, so to speak, of for Article 6. All of our responsibilities under that Paris Agreement are centralized in this one unit. It enhances our ability to measure, report, and verify on our climate vulnerability, and so that should improve our data, the integrity of our data, how quickly we can give updates, and how we can verify the information that we are producing is correct. And that has, Mr. Vice President, that is important when we talk about verifying carbon credits in the future and being able to trade, etc. All of this with a centralized focal point, better administration, better collection and verification of information, better budget accounting for climate change, being able to verify information, produce reports, share reports with international organizations in a timely manner will assist us in being able to access some of this climate finance money that is, that is out there. The key, though, is to be able to have up-to-date, readily available, auditable, verified information that we can share with those global funds, so that we can be able to access climate finance in a timely manner. And so, Mr. Vice President, the 2025 Amendment Bill, the 2025 Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit, the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill 2025, and the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill 2025, when taken together, they move the Bahamas from a primarily legal framework to a clearer, centralized operation where there's better governance, and that model with a defined financial and regulatory machinery. Financial is concentrated in the Ministry of Finance, regulatory machinery within the Office of the Prime Minister. And so one of the objectives and one of the responsibilities of the environmental unit will be to develop secondary regulations, education, and capacity building. And if we were to do that, these changes should materially improve the integrity, the transparency, and the ability for individuals, companies, et cetera, to invest in any carbon credits that are generated in the Bahamas. And so I sought just to go through what the changes are, Mr. Vice President. The bottom line is we're seeking better coordination so that we are, at the end of the day, better able to respond to the whole issue of climate change and access some of those climate funds that are out there. But in the past, perhaps our response has been more fragmented and we're not able to move as effectively as we wanted to be. But with a unit situated within the office of the Prime Minister, it is expected that we can have much better coordination, which will lead to much better climate response, including mitigation, preparation, education, et cetera. So with those words, I move for second reading and committal of the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill 2025.
Thank you, Senator Michael Alkidas, for your contribution. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable J. Ann Major.
Thank you, Madam President. It is once again an honor to be back in this honorable chamber, and I rise today to make my contribution to the debate on the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill of 2025 and the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill of 2025, and to indicate my strong support for these important pieces of legislation that go to the very heart of our national survival, our economic resilience, and our responsibility to future generations. Before I get into these bills, Madam President, I was not here when the Senate last met, so I'm hoping that Madam President would permit me to congratulate the newly ratified candidates of our great progressive Liberal Party. I am proud that this party continues to attract individuals who are ready to do the serious work of nation building. I offer special congratulations to the leader of government business in this honorable chamber, our Minister of Economic Affairs, and the incoming Member of Parliament for the great constituency of St. Barnabas, the Honorable Michael Halkitis. Despite him not being the sitting MP for the constituency, he did not run away. Instead, he remained steadfast in his commitment to uplifting the people of that community. St. Barnabas, it ain't long now before you are back in good hands. Yes, yes. And I also wish to offer special congratulations to the consumer protection watchdog himself, Senator Randy Roll, the incoming Member of Parliament for his hometown islands of Bimini and the Berry Islands. Madam President, I am confident that these men and all of our recently ratified candidates are the best choice to keep this country moving forward. Madam President, we all know politics is certainly not easy, and public life is certainly not gentle, especially in this season. But service remains a noble calling, and I commend each individual, including my colleagues opposite, for their willingness to serve the Bahamian people and to offer themselves for public service. Madam President, when we think about climate change, this is not an abstract theory for the Bahamas. It is not something that we just read about in our textbooks or hear about in international news or at overseas conferences and think that doesn't concern us. At least we shouldn't. For Bahamians, climate change has names, dates, and scars. All of us can remember exactly where we were when the Bahamas experienced Hurricane Dorian. And I'm not just speaking about the storm itself, but the aftermath, the silence, the devastation, and the unimaginable loss. I remember speaking to family members, fellow Bahamians who were unsure whether they would ever return home or how they would begin to pick up the pieces and rebuild their lives. And long before Dorian, Madam President, we were already seeing the signs. coastlines disappearing inch by inch in Long Island, Grand Bahama, and Andros, salt water creeping into our freshwater wells, insurance becoming unaffordable, and infrastructure that's designed for a climate that no longer exists. So when we debate climate legislation, Madam President, this is not an exercise in political theory. It is a matter of national self-preservation. And this is precisely why these bills are so timely. Let me start with the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit bill. To put it plainly, this bill ensures that climate change is no longer treated as an afterthought scattered across different ministries, but as a central pillar of government. It establishes a dedicated team of experts within government whose job is to ensure that every major decision the government makes considers climate risk, climate resilience, and climate opportunity. This means advising the government on climate risks to our infrastructure, communities, and our economy, coordinating climate action across ministries to avoid piecemeal, fragmented action, strengthening our access to international climate financing by ensuring we are meeting our reporting requirements under international climate agreements, developing a national climate change policy and national adaptation plan, and conducting regular updates of these plans and policies to ensure that they align with climate science as global conditions change, and overseeing the government's participation in carbon markets by ensuring proper coordination with the National Emissions Registry and aligning carbon initiatives with national priorities. But most importantly, Madam President, this means protecting Bahamian communities before disaster strikes, not just after. Instead of reacting after hurricanes, floods, and erosion, this unit helps us anticipate the risks and reduce losses, which ultimately would save taxpayer dollars. It means roads, schools, and clinics and housing that was traditionally designed for the realities of that are no longer designed for the realities of today, but the assumptions of decades past. I think about the communities in our family islands that rebuild after every major storm, only to face the same devastation again. This bill will help to break the cycle. This is what governance that looks ahead looks like, rather than having to always play catch up. Madam President, the second bill before us is the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill of 2025. This is equally transformative and perhaps even more exciting for Bahamians when they understand the true scope of what this act truly does. As Senator Halkitis would have indicated, the key feature of this amendment bill is to transfer the reporting requirements and responsibilities from the Minister of the Environment to the Prime Minister. But this piece of legislation is where environmental stewardship meets economic opportunity by strengthening our country's framework for participating in the global market. Now let me break that down simply. The world is moving toward carbon accountability. Countries and corporations that emit greenhouse gases are being required, or some would say pressured, to offset those emissions. Here in the Bahamas, we possess some of the largest and most powerful natural carbon sinks on the planet. Our mangroves, our wetlands, and our seagrass meadows. They are low-key the climate's superheroes, and we are home to the largest seagrass ecosystems in the world. These ecosystems all naturally absorb and store carbon, and the world is finally recognizing their value. This legislation ensures that the Bahamas controls its carbon assets, carbon credits are properly measured, verified, and regulated, revenues are properly administered, and environmental integrity is protected, and most importantly, that Bahamians benefit. This is not about selling our environment, it is about being fairly compensated for protecting it. As the Prime Minister would have rightly said, this is about ensuring that those who benefit from our natural climate services help to pay for our protection. For the average Bahamian, this means our environment becomes an economic asset, not just something we defend emotionally every time something goes wrong. It also means more jobs and training for young Bahamians. It means new revenue streams that can support education, infrastructure, and disaster resilience. It means stronger bargaining power for the Bahamas on the international stage, all while protecting the very ecosystems that support our way of life, those jewels that make the Bahamas the Bahamas. Madam President, as with everything that is new, I know there will be skeptics who say carbon markets are risky, it's premature, it's untested. But as I've said many times in this case, the greater risk is in doing nothing. The greater risk is in allowing others to define the value of our environment while we sit on the sidelines. The greater risk is remaining solely dependent on post-disaster aid instead of building sustainable revenue streams rooted in preservation. Madam President, these bills come at a critical moment. The global climate finance system is evolving rapidly. Countries with clear legal frameworks will attract funding and partnerships, and those without them will be left behind. By passing these bills now, the Bahamas positions itself not as a victim of climate change, but as a leader among small island states with credibility, structure, and foresight. And this is how we protect our sovereignty in a changing world. This is how we protect our rights as Bahamians to decide for ourselves. Madam President, I must now take a moment to acknowledge the visionary and relentless leadership of our Prime Minister, Philip Davis, who has made it clear both at home and on the world stage that the Bahamas will not quietly suffer the consequences of a crisis we did not create. As he so powerfully stated in his contribution in that other place a few weeks ago, climate change is already here. We are living in the midst of it, and waiting for sympathy will not save us. We must, in his words, save ourselves. Under his leadership, climate action has been reframed from charity to strategy, from moral appeal to national interest. And these bills give legal form to that leadership. Madam President, these bills tell the Bahamian people that their government understands the urgency of the moment and is acting with foresight, seriousness, and most of all, purpose. They tell the international community that the Bahamas is no longer going to sit by and wait to be rescued. We are building resilience, asserting value, and we are shaping our own future. And they tell our children that we did not ignore the warning signs. We chose preparation over panic. For these reasons, Madam President, I fully support both bills, and I commend our Prime Minister for his leadership that is equal to the moment. I commend this administration for once again taking the steps to place the Bahamas on the right side of history. May God continue to bless my honorable colleagues in this chamber, and may God continue to bless the people of this great Commonwealth. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable J.Ann Major, for your contribution. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michaela Barnett Ellis.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we are in election season, and Bahamians are paying very close attention to the choices being put before them, not just in words, but in actions. At a time when people are demanding competence, accountability, and leadership that reflects their lived realities, the Free National Movement has taken a deliberate step forward by ratifying 13 women candidates in the upcoming general election. As one of the 13 recently ratified for the Free National Movement to stand in the upcoming election, I'm honored to embody a commitment to substantive progress and inclusive leadership. Our presence is not merely symbolic. It is a testament to the value of diverse perspectives in decision-making and the necessity of accountability in public life. You know, 13 is a lucky number, and I quite enjoy being Senator number 13, but I think that might have just changed. Madam President, women are not passive observers in public affairs. We are partners in decision makers who understand, through lived experience and the impact of rising costs and consequences of government decisions. We recognize that trust is built on transparency, and that fiscal responsibility is not an abstract concept. It is fundamental to the security and well-being of our families. It is with this same sense of responsibility and seriousness that I rise today to contribute to the debate on climate change, on the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill and the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill. Climate change is real. The weather over the last 10 days has demonstrated that climate change is real, and climate vulnerability is real. And for a small island nation like ours The consequences of getting climate governance wrong are not theoretical, they're existential. So let me say this clearly at the outset. No one on this side of the table disputes the importance of climate planning, climate finance, or climate resilience. What we dispute and what we must challenge is how this government governs, how it concentrates power, and how it consistently avoids accountability. Because climate resilience cannot be built on blind trust, and climate finance cannot be managed on faith alone. Madam President, when these two bills are read together, a clear pattern emerges. The Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill 2025 places responsibility for climate change, climate finance, carbon markets, international reporting, and policy coordination squarely under the office of the Prime Minister. The companion amendment bill then removes the remaining reporting responsibilities from the Minister of the Environment and formally transfers them to the Prime Minister as well. In effect, policy development, international reporting, carbon market oversight, and executive supervision are consolidated in one office. And the question the Senate must ask, and the question the Bahamian people are entitled to ask, is simple. Where is the accountability? Madam President, it is important to place on the record that the accountability gap I have described is not new. The original Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiatives Act 2022 contains no requirement for reporting to Parliament. Reporting flows within the executive and outward to international bodies, but never to this Parliament that represents the will of the people. These bills were an opportunity to correct that omission. Instead, they entrench it while expanding executive authority even further. And that is not oversight, that is a choice. This government is allergic to oversight. Madam President, this administration has developed a reputation not for transparency, but for centralizing authority while resisting scrutiny. We've seen it in the public procurement, healthcare infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and now climate finance. Time and time again, this government asks Parliament to approve structures first and promises accountability later, if at all. These bills establish a climate change and environment fund that can receive international grants, climate debt swaps, loss and damage funds, and proceeds from carbon markets. Yet nowhere in this legislation do we see mandatory parliamentary reporting, independent audits written into statute, or clear public disclosure requirements on how these funds are spent. That omission is consistent with how this administration has governed. Madam President, carbon markets are not symbolic instruments. They involve national assets, international contracts, long-term commitments, and real financial exposure for the Bahamian people. Under these bills, decisions about carbon credits, bilateral agreements, and internationally transferred mitigation outcomes rest largely within an executive structure that faces minimal legislative oversight. The Senate is being asked to trust that everything will be managed responsibility by the same administration that repeatedly tells the country that it didn't know about problems until they become a full-blown crisis. That is not responsible governance. That is a gamble with national assets. And it's a pattern that Bahamians recognize. Madam President, Bahamians are not disengaged because they don't care. They are disengaged because they feel shut out. They see a government that consults after decisions are made. They see announcements without follow-through. They see policies launched without results. And now they see yet another framework that asks them to trust power that refuses to explain itself. We cannot complain about voter apathy while systemically removing the public from meaningful oversight. Let me be clear. Climate policy is not just about international conferences and technical frameworks. It's about whether communities, like the low-lying areas of Killarney, are protected from flooding, whether infrastructure is resilient, whether West Bay Street and the beaches that run along it are protected from coastal erosion, whether climate funds actually reach vulnerable areas, and whether national assets are safeguarded for future generations. That requires checks and balances, not concentration and convenience. Madam President, the greatest weakness of these bills is not their ambition, it is their assumption. They assume this administration should be trusted with unprecedented authority despite its record. They assume responsibility will follow power, even though experience tells us otherwise. They assume Parliament should approve first and ask questions later. But accountability delayed is accountability denied. In closing, Madam President, climate resilience demands strong institutions, not strong personalities. It demands transparency and not silence. It demands that government remembers who it works for. Climate finance is not the government's money. It is our people's future. And the people of the Bahamas deserve a system that works for them and not the powerful few. And with that, Madam President, may God continue to bless you and bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Michael Bonnet Ellis, for your contribution. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Hentfield. Senator Hentfield, you have the floor.
I thank you, Madam President. I do appreciate today is a good day for a little bit of levity, for a little bit of levity, and people who don't hear us from our seats most times don't know what they miss. But I do rise to contribute to these two very important pieces of legislation, the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Bill 2025 and the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Bill 2025. I believe these are very important pieces of legislation, Madam President. We on this side completely agree with the concept of climate justice. I think as far back as the Linden, governments of the Bahamas have been traveling the world in some form or fashion and saying to people that it is unfair the way we are treated in this era of El Nino it was then, or El Nino, and now we call it climate change. But in any event, tides are rising, the weather is getting unpredictable, and floods are becoming more and more frequent. We know that hurricanes and bad weather systems, we call them, come to our shores on a regular basis. You know, recently we saw ice on a vehicle somewhere in Andros. I remember as a young man in Abaco, I won't date myself, but I was about 14, 15, when I saw myself personally flakes falling from the sky. And I don't know if they had any of that in Grand Bahama, Brother Russell, this time around, but Grand Bahama had reported similarly during that period that it was so cold. And so people in Sandy Point and Abaco, where my wife is from, they're picking, for the last couple of days, they were getting fish. They were crumb in the water. Yeah. I was in Grand Bahama as well. You know, I understand there was some nice mutton fish. And you saw some, yeah? And some jacks and other variety, and even crawfish that could not move because of cold weather. So, you know, climate change is upon us, and it is well. You know, and these bills, in simple terms, causes the Prime Minister to assume responsibility of the management of the country's climate change regime and any potential benefits that might derive from our world-leading sequestration or carbon absorption capacity that we hope to derive from our seagrass and mangroves. You know, whilst presenting on these bills in the other place, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Since taking office in 2021, this administration has pursued a climate change agenda that connects environmental protection with economic security and long-term development." All very laudable goals. As I suggested or stated, we are the least offensive, and we say this all the time, in black carbon emissions that pollute our atmosphere. But yet we are the recipient of all of the harmful effects of the same. Madam President, we might easily add in the Prime Minister's comments that since coming to office in 2021, his administration has been traveling to the tune of untold millions in pursuit of their elusive climate agenda outcomes. I just heard the minister say he ain't see the money yet. If you know more than the minister, get up, I'll sit down. He just tell me he ain't see the money yet. You wasn't listening to him. I can know when it hit the bank. That's probably like the money for the Grand Lucayan when they hit the bank yet. Yeah, I'll be a bigger man than you all. You all don't apologize. but I'm not averse to apologizing when I'm wrong. I say I'm wrong. Don't get me wrong now. Unlike many powerful others, right? I believe there's validity in pursuing the climate agenda, given these systems that we face. Now, apart from Hurricane Dorian, which indiscriminately took lives and property in 2019, we recently experienced, as I said, cold like we had not seen since 1977. As was the case then, fish were harvested without line and without traps. You just go and pick them up. Island boys like that kind of thing, right? That is why we believe that this is a good agenda to pursue. And we believe that it is a laudable effort. But there's only so much hope that you're spending millions and millions and millions. There's only so much hope to go around. At some point, the government has to show the returns on investment. You all have potential to invest. That's why people get into businesses, because they feel I can get into a business and make a good living. So we admit that the potential is there. We've seen the science, and we've spoken with the scientists who explain to us how the carbon credit system should work with our expansive seagrass, which I believe they said is the largest in the world. And God is good to have afforded us such an opportunity. It is believed that by government operatives and technocrats in the field that the Bahamas might be able to reap a windfall of around $900 million a year if this thing materializes. That's quite a pretty penny. In fact, the research suggests that averages of about 67,000 to 93,000 square kilometers, which, is quite an expansive amount, represents the largest seagrass meadows in the world. Projections are that we could possibly receive up to $60 billion. These are the projections that I've read. By 2050. That's a lot of money. And the same bread, government officials will say to you, the market is still being developed. All told, is intended to monetize the country's blue carbon assets, which at least the last I heard, the arrangement was 49% of the executing entity was to be owned by Bahamians, which left the majority of shares to be held by the company, I think it is, that was doing the development of this blue carbon initiative for us. In any event, it is like the talk that people have about aragonite. We have aragonite in abundance, but you have to mine it, and then you have to go and do the industrial work to get it to the point where it's good enough to make the glass with the cell phones, they say, you know, and help with the space shuttles. But it has to be gotten. And so I think that is the type of arrangement government seeks to operate in with the company that they have engaged, I believe, through a public-private partnership. It's been illustrated that the revenues derived will be used to develop and or improve much-needed healthcare facilities, airports and docks and infrastructure, and other community development projects. Madam President, like most of this government's plans and initiatives, we can't seem to get a handle on how they materialize in the moment. You know, I remember when we did the first budget here, it was a budget that we had left in place, and so there was a supplemental budget brought. And then when the budget came back, the first budget brought by this administration, I remember hearing about all these economies, orange economies, blue economies, and some other economies that exist out there that we could perhaps be. Yeah, but I remember also saying that this is a rainbow budget, right? That I don't know, although I wish for the best, how it will produce, and I don't know that you could show me today how this budget, how these things are produced, right? I don't know if you can show me that today. No, ma'am. I'm very good.
Is she ready?
I'm very good. He's a sheep. I'm a wolf.
Armed
No,
and ready.
that's a Long Island man. He know but sheep. He know but sheep. That's a Long Island man. I'm a hunter. I from Albuquerque. We hunt wild hogs. So sheep's a tame. Right? And you know, I remember it was almost like an Oprah show. We can put an airport there. We can put an airport here. We can put this there. We can put that there. I remember too when Minister Halkida spoke about our budget one time, and he heard about all the things that we were going to do, and then he heard that, and then he breathed a sigh of relief, right? In a sense, not in a bad way, but you know, at that time we had FTX, and we were talking things like we're going to trade this blue carbon on that platform, and all kind of good and big talks. But you know where Sam Bankman-Fried is? I believe he in New York somewhere in jail. He's not freed. he's not freed. So the government has sought to frame climate change or global warming as an ethical and political issue rather than just an environmental one. And the thesis is simple. We are the least responsible for black carbon. So we should benefit from those industrial countries that pollute the world and cause us harm, we believe. I remember after Dorian going to New York and meeting with people who were talking about this Green Climate Fund. And I said to some of them, I said, listen, man, we hear this all the time. But we in the Bahamas are in dire straits right now because of your black carbon emissions, we believe, that cause the frequency and ferocity of these weather systems that not only destroy and disrupt our economy, they kill our people. And so the time for talk has long passed. And so we appreciate the government's effort to try and seek justice in this regard. No justice, there's no justice, it appears, in this vicious cycle. I went as far as to say, look, we don't have to manage your money, right? If you're concerned that you're going to send your money to the Bahamas or the Caribbean and we do what we like with your money, you know, you could send your people to manage your money. And if your taxpayers are concerned that their monies are going to be managed in the Bahamas to do things to benefit other countries, send your people who work to build things, right? Build highways and build seawalls and that kind of thing. You know, and that brings me to another point that I read recently or heard about recently, that the Minister of Health is suggesting that 50-50 for the Chinese development of the loan that we're getting for the hospital that many Bahamians believe we don't need, I'm one of those. I think we should fix the one that we have now before we venture into another area of building another hospital. To Thucydides, some people call him Tacidides. Thucydides said, the strong do as they will, and the weak do as they must. Governments do as they will, and we understand that. Governments have their way, but we are entitled to our say. And of all the words I heard today of my departed friend and senator who left here today, she had her say, right? So in the end, though, it seems that we are left at the mercy of offensive industrialists to determine whether we receive financing or recompense for the harm they inflict. Clearly, the impact of climate change on low-income countries is disproportionate. But to place our whole geopolitical advances on politics, the politics of climate change, and invest so heavily is a risk, because you can have an election, as we've seen in the United States the other day, that is very consequential to your investment, where some big countries don't believe that they should recompense you for the damages caused in the arena of climate change. And so we must find, I believe, balance. I believe we must find a balance that lets people know that we're here, we're championing this cause, but not to the complete detriment of the things that we have to do at home, because we have to build seawalls. We have to replant mangroves in areas. In South Beach, where I am now, there's no place more palpable than the need for seawalls and mangroves. And I see because the southwestern coast of New Providence, some people are telling me that I'm going to have to raise my foundation. And raising a foundation, as we know, if you have a 8-foot ceiling, and you need to raise your foundation about 3-4 feet, you're looking at basically building a new home, because that is how bad the flooding is. And so we must find a way to remediate and find mitigation to these issues. Behemoths ought not be living like that. And so you have to be able to understand what behemoths are saying when they say, if you're going to spend $1 million on one trip and leave me here in all this water, and what am I to do? But there are systems in place where, okay, for instance, in some of our newer developments in government subdivisions, there is a sewer system that does not require you have a cesspit, right, in your yard, because it sucks into another system at a plant somewhere else. So, I'm no engineer, but I believe it might be possible for such a system to be put in place to collect the waters from the wells, the drains that we have that we fail to maintain on time, and send it to that place, and treat that water through some form of reverse osmosis, and use it as gray water to water our parks, or our grass in the yard, or whatever, right? But we can't continue to look at behemoths and say, you got to live with this, because we as governments have failed them in not holding the developers accountable for doing the things that they ought to have done, putting in the proper infrastructure in these subdivisions, these private subdivisions, right? Before we allowed them to sell them to our people. All of us have failed in this regard. We've all allowed it, and we've turned a blind eye, right? And behemoths are left to suffer, and the government, whoever you are, whichever administration it is, you're left to hold the bag. Because I have sat at the table where we said, look, it has been so many years past now since this development has happened, you don't even know who the shareholders are, who the developers are anymore in some cases. They've gone out of business. And so what do? Do you leave behemoths there without infrastructure, without light, without water, without cable, without proper sewer systems? I walked through a community this weekend, and the roads are like the roads that I was used to growing up in Albuquerque as a boy, dirt roads in the city with huge holes that gather water when the rain comes. And Bahamians are left to deal with this because we didn't hold anybody accountable at the time of the development to make sure that they did put in place what they had to put in place to cause this to happen. And so if we could get some money from our carbon sinks, such as the mangroves and our seagrass beds, more power to us. But in the meanwhile, let's use some money from somewhere else. Cut down on them delegations to travel, 70 of them to these COP this and COP that, and put some seawall someplace. That when the floods come, the Bahamians would be a little bit more secure than the sandbags we offer them as politicians. We got to do better. We got to do better. There's no sign of climate change funding promise by this government since the time they came to office. No sign. Now, it would be remiss of me if I didn't say we got some funding based on climate issues from I think it was the Latin American people, the bank that we went into engaged. We got some funding from them to the tune of, I think, about $100 million. But this seagrass, blue carbon money I'm talking about, this is the money I'm looking for. $90 billion by 2050, right? And so this is what Bahamians are faced with. This is our reality. Bahamians are interested in knowing how much their hard-earned monies have been spent thus far, chasing the carbon credits and the seagrass meadows qualifications. We, if entrusted by the Bahamian people, will pursue a PPP with no cash up front, which is, I hope that's what you did, but with strong regulatory control and equity participation in the value of the asset. Bahamians themselves should benefit from the assets, the natural assets of this country. That's why others are out there able to tout it to them, and they accept it without even explaining to them how you're going to cause this monies to come into their hands. I believe that any funds that we get from this climate agenda, if in our lifetime, should be designated for climate risk adaptation and disaster recovery. Because you are right, Senator, that too often your assertion was too often we go with hat in hand, right? Yeah, too often we go with hat in hand to those who've caused us harm and hoping that they bless us, right? But this fund, if we could see it materialize and work for Bahamians the way it ought to work, we don't have to do that. We can help some others who find themselves in trouble. When the fund grows, I believe it should be placed into an endowment capable of self-generating returns sufficient to meet the annual estimated needs. So Minister Halkid is coming here slaving over that little, and the financial secretary slaving over that little couple of pennies for budget. That would be a thing of the past if we could get this done. The problem we have, though, is that getting this done still remains in the hands of those industrial countries in a lot of instances who are not yet believers. They are agnostic. They are non-believers. They don't believe that this is an issue. And until they can convince, some countries in Europe have been able to do it, convince their companies that you ought to pay into this fund to recoup some of the damages, to pay for some of the damages you've caused. Because our seagrass meadows, as I understand the science, has more blue carbon impact than the Amazon jungle. And that's amazing. That's amazing because people were fighting for years to keep the rainforest intact. And so we are right to fight to keep our seagrass intact and be compensated for it. We just need to do it responsibly. We need to do it in a way that there's not a surprise sprung on people, that we have meetings and educate people as to what we're trying to do. And then we go for it. Let there be buy-in by our people first. And say, explain, this is what we're doing. Don't just let them wake up in the morning and find buoys all over Elizabeth Harbor. That's wrong. That's wrong, right? And this is the final point that I want to make, but I have to endorse the point made because it's in my notes. I have to endorse the point made by Senator Barnett Ellis. that there is need for oversight. I don't know if you're like me, if you're walking and knocking on doors. I know Senator Barnett is and Senator Halkitis is. Bahamians have become disenchanted with politicians. They don't believe us. And they say, I've heard that story so many times. It's the same old story. And the only way we're going to disabuse them of that disenchantment, they say to him, I guarantee you. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. Give it some time. No. We're good today. We're good today. Give it some time, and you will see. They don't believe us because we are reluctant to let go of power. And we have reached the stage of development in our country where Bahamians need to feel more power and that they are in control, actually, of their future. And we need more politicians to begin to think that way. And the way we do it is by allowing more oversight in legislation that they can be a part of. There's no way that you should have a potential $90 billion to manage in 2050. And we're not going to be sitting in this place, not us, who I trust and know. Right? We're not likely to be sitting here in 2050. Right? No, but I certainly won't be here. Not in 2050. You know, if I'm around, I plan to be with my grandchildren somewhere in a boat with a line in the water. And just tell them, give Papa a drink of cool water. Right? But we must begin to prepare now, Madam President, for such a future. So we have to let go of all this power that we have. How do you have now in clause 6 in the bill, right? Clause if you look at clause 6, where is the bill? Clause 6.3c, I think it is. I think it's the one that creates the body. Yeah. The Environmental Advisory Unit bill, right? If you look at clause 6 in the bill, clause 6.3c, it says that the oversight of committees related to climate finance, carbon markets, carbon policy, sustainable development, and special projects, all of that will be the responsibility of some government appointee. Because it says here the responsibilities of the director of the Climate Change Unit. He's going to be hired by the government, right? Put in office by the government. And that's why we have independence in the judiciary. And that's why we wanted independence in this place. So that we won't have the ability to go to some public servant and say, this is what you ought to be doing. And they say, and here they could say, no, these are the rules. This is the law. In the courts, they say we are a separate part. We have separation of powers. And so why not consider putting in this bill here some public, some civil group, right? That does not have to answer to the government. But you will still have the ability to outvote them, but then they would have a right to discourse on behalf of that constituency that is not represented at the table. That's the kind of governance I believe Bahamians are looking for. You know, right now my wife is planning a cruise and I can't go with her mother and my children. You know why I can't go? I don't know when elections are going to be called. I don't know when elections are going to be called, and this is a promise we failed at. So I have myself to blame, right? It's not just you I have to blame, I have myself to blame. This promise we failed at the last time we were in office. Because we had promised a date certain for elections. Imagine Bahamians now who want to vote, who want to participate in the process, and we have so many that don't, right? I heard a man on the radio this morning saying, I can't do this or I can't do that because one man has the power to call it. I know, we failed at that. I said that. I said we failed at that. Huh? One thing you find with me, where we fail, I'm not ashamed to say. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say, you know, but we need more independent oversight. This bill, as pointed out by Senator Ellis, does not even require this committee or this unit to report back to Parliament. To say to the Bahamian people, this is what we've achieved, this is what we got, right? And this is what your share is, and this is what the other people got, and this is how we're going to spend it. I don't see that anywhere in the bill. Civil society. Bahamians have a right to be a part of their patrimony. That's what they fight for. And one more thing I'll say, Madam President, and I'll sit down. This government has, to its credit, done very hard work with Felix Stubbs in the National Development Plan. A man whom I respect highly and most Bahamians respect highly. A worker, an extraordinary Bahamian who picked up a company many years ago and made it a respectable company in the country. So he's fighting for a national development plan, for the acceptance of it. And I heard him say recently, I printed it so I'm just talking off air. Stubbs points out the challenges from permanent secretaries in the National Development Plan. Permanent secretaries who work for the government, you know, work for the people. The government wants a national development plan, right? Most of whom, many of whom have been brought back as consultants, standing in the way of young people. And I know people don't want me to say that, they wouldn't like that I say that because they say they have people who can vote too. I talked to a public servant, called me this week, who said, you know, I am in the executive corps, and these people are running the ministry. So we have no succession planning, right? And so young public servants or public servants who are now in their retirement, this person has very few years left before they retire, but they won't likely sit as a permanent secretary in the regime that we have. We can talk some more about that another time. But here's the point I want to make. If we are trying to put together a national development plan, these laws that we pass today that we can go and amend later, and we probably will, right, will have consequences to the future, for the future. And so, would it not have been wise, right, to sit everybody in the room and say, let's agree to do this. We won't agree on everything. And the government will know what we don't agree on because we'll have an opportunity to say. And we'll say, when we come to office, God grants us the privilege, that we will change. But in healthcare, in education, in climate justice reform, we should be able to, together as political groups and parties, sit and chart the way forward. This should not be a private venture for a government in office, right? And we've all failed as well in this regard. We have pushed through our agendas. And at some point, we're going to have to change the way we do business in the Bahamas if we want our children to have the future that we envision. That's why we're here. That's why Senator Seymour was here, because we want a better Bahamas, right? So why could we have not sat and decided, look here, let's fix, you want to build a new hospital, special, what you call a specialty hospital. Let's fix Princess Margaret first. Let's fix that first. If we can multitask, right? But that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, right? That can end up well over 600 million if you go through it, because you know you have these change orders that come. Yeah. I understand that. I never agreed, and I'll say this and then I'll sit. I believe that we should have important things like this where we spend almost $1 billion, or we stand to receive $90 billion, Madam President. I believe that this should be a part of the talk or the National Development Plan, that we could all agree that we're going to spend the proceeds from this for climate mitigation, for infrastructure development and the rest. And with the hospital, I would have never agreed 50-50 Chinese to come in here. Never. And I told the Chinese this before. I said, you can come with your development money, but you will not, on our watch, bring 70% Chinese to 30% Bahamian labor. I mean, you all have allowed, from what I heard the minister say, 50-50. We said to them, 20-80. Because, you know, we're going to have to pay back the loan. If we're going to have to pay back the loan, how you can call it terms? No, they wanted to give us grants. In the first instance they offered 12 million. These things are all record, public record, part of public record. And I said, you know, for me, a grant is a grant. That means I don't pay it back. We don't pay that back. They said, yeah, no problem. I said, but you know, the labor component doesn't change for us. It's 70-30. And they said, okay, we can talk about that. And then they came with another 12. These are all a part of the public records. And I said, you know, the component for me does not change. For our government, for our administration, it does not change. But now here you are, 50-50. No, they wanted it to go to the repair, the sports center, and the rest of it. So there are specific things that they want these things to do, right? Specific things. And so Madam President, I believe that these bills are all good and needed, but I believe these bills need more work. We support them in the state that they're in. Huh? They're moving in the right direction, but they gotta get there with more openness, with more accountability, with more transparency, with more oversight. I think most, if not all of our laws that we have to look at in that fashion, so the Bahamians who feel disenfranchised and disenchanted would begin to feel a little bit more better about participating in our political system. With that, I thank you and I rest.
Thank you, Senator Darren Handfield, for your contribution. As many, the chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michael Halkitis.
Thank you, Madam President. Brief wrap-up. I wish to thank all senators for their contributions. As has been said by all who contributed, climate change is a real phenomenon. It's not a hoax. It impacts us very severely. These two pieces, the amendment to one piece of legislation and the other piece of legislation to create a unit, I think it's one step forward in our administration and management of the unit and our response to climate change. And I think we can look forward as we move forward to more refinement of the regime, inclusive of some of the reporting and enhanced transparency that we heard of during the debate. And so, but I think by and large there is agreement. It's a step forward. It affects all of us. All of us have an interest. Truly, all of us deserve to be informed about everything that's happening, and so we take those comments in the spirit that they were given. So, Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of the Climate Change and Carbon Credit Initiative Amendment Bill 2025.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Climate Change and Carbon Credit Market Initiative Act. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act.
For the second reading of bills?
Yes, Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act to establish the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit to give effect in part to the Paris Agreement, including the interagency coordination on climate matters, particularly climate finance, climate adaptation, loss and damage, carbon markets, action for climate empowerment, the advancement of climate policies, reports and plans, and for connected purposes.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to establish the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit to give effect in part to the Paris Agreement, including interagency coordination on climate matters, particularly climate finance, climate adaptation, loss and damage, carbon markets, action for climate empowerment, the advancement of climate policies, reports, and plans, and for connected purposes. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to establish the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit to give effect in part to the Paris Agreement, including interagency coordination on climate matters, particularly climate finance, climate adaptation, loss and damage, carbon markets, action for climate empowerment, the advancement of climate policies, reports and plans, and for connected purposes.
For the second reading of bills.
And none, Madam President.
Committee of the Whole.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do resolve itself into a committee of the whole with the Vice President in the chair.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole with the Vice President as Chairman of the Committee of the Whole. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, with respect to the bill for an act to amend the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act, I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move to a bill for an act to establish the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit to give effect in part to the Paris Agreement, including interagency coordination on climate matters, particularly climate finance, climate adaptation, loss and damage, carbon markets, action for climate empowerment, advancement of climate policies, reports and plans, and for connected purposes. I move that the long title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that clauses 2 through 16 of the bill be agreed.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 16 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is agreed. Clauses 2 through 16 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I now move that the President do take the chair.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the President do now take the chair. As many are in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose say nay. The motion is carried. The President will now take the chair. They changed it, yeah. They didn't do it, yeah. Madam President, I beg leave to report that the Committee of the Whole has examined both bills, having made no amendments to either bill.
Honorable members, the Vice President and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole has reported that the committee has examined the bills, having made no amendment thereto. Third reading and passing of bills.
Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to amend the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act.
Order this bill do now pass, and the name thereof declared to be Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Amendment Act 2026. For the third reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President, I move for third reading and passing of a bill for an act to establish the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit to give effect in part to the Paris Agreement, including interagency coordination on climate matters, particularly climate finance, climate adaptation, loss and damage, carbon markets, action for climate empowerment, advancement of climate policies, reports and plans, and for connected purposes.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a third time and passed. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order the bill be read for a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to establish the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit to give effect in part to the Paris Agreement, including interagency coordination on climate matters, particularly climate finance, climate adaptation, loss and damage, carbon markets, action for climate empowerment, the advancement of climate policies, reports, and plans, and for connected purposes.
Order that this bill do now pass, and the title thereof declared to be Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit Act 2026. For the third reading of bills.
There are none, Madam President.
Consideration of House amendments, resolutions, discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings,
Renew all notices in the name of the government.
orders for clerk, adjournment.
Madam President, I move that the Senate at its rising do adjourn sine die.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the Senate at its rising do adjourn sine die. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
It has been moved and seconded that the Senate do now adjourn. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The Senate stands adjourned sine die.